November 27, 1950, Chosin Reservoir, North Korea. The temperature plunges to 36 degrees below zero. Ice crystals hang in the air like suspended glass. A Marine tries to inject morphine into a wounded comrade. The syringe is frozen solid. He places it in his mouth, waiting for his body heat to thaw the painkiller. Round them, 120,000 Chinese soldiers are moving through the mountains. The Americans don't know it yet, but they're surrounded, 12,000 men, outnumbered 10 to 1. In the most brutal cold American forces have ever fought in. What happens next will redefine what's possible in warfare. But to understand how these men ended up in this frozen hell, we have to go back for months, to a war nobody saw coming. June 25, 1950, 4:00 a.m., the 38th parallel, North Korean tanks crash across the border into South Korea, supported by Soviet artillery. The South Korean army isn't ready. They've been caught completely off guard. The invasion is swift and brutal, using blitzkrieg tactics perfected by Germany a decade earlier. Within 3 days, Seoul falls. The capital is in flames. President Truman faces a decision. The world is 5 years removed from the most devastating war in human history. Nobody wants another conflict. But if Korea falls, what's next? Japan, the Philippines? Stalin had miscalculated. He believed America wouldn't intervene. He was wrong. On June 27th, the UN Security Council declares the invasion a breach of peace and authorizes military force. But authorization doesn't stop tanks. By August, North Korean forces have pushed UN troops into a tiny pocket in the southeast corner of the peninsula. They call it the Pusan perimeter. August-September 1950, the last stand. American and South Korean forces control a small defensive perimeter around Pusan. It's their final foothold. Behind them is the sea. There's nowhere left to retreat. The North Korean army launches coordinated attacks against the entire perimeter, trying to drive UN forces into the ocean. Every day brings desperate fighting. Every night brings the question, will we still be here tomorrow? But something is happening in the skies. B-29 bombers pound enemy supply lines and industrial targets. Fighter planes provide relentless close air support. The North Koreans are taking devastating losses. Their advance slows, then stops. These battles mark the first major turning point. The North Korean army realizes they no longer have overwhelming power. Then comes the move that changes everything. September 15, 1950, Incheon. General Douglas MacArthur proposes something audacious. An amphibious landing deep behind enemy lines at the port of Incheon, near Seoul. His own commanders call it reckless. The tides are treacherous. The harbor is heavily fortified. MacArthur does it anyway. 75,000 troops and 261 naval vessels commit to the operation. The landing on September 15th cuts off North Korean supply lines and communication. Within days, UN forces capture the largely undefended port and push towards Seoul, liberating the capital. By September 25th, the North Korean army collapses. Soldiers flee north in disarray, abandoning weapons and equipment. Victory seems inevitable. By October, North Korean forces have been expelled from South Korea entirely. MacArthur doesn't stop. He pursues them across the 38th parallel into North Korea itself. On October 19th, UN forces capture Pyongyang, North Korea's capital. Some units reach the Yalu River, the border with China. MacArthur tells the press the war will be over in 2 weeks. His men will be home by Christmas. Then the mountains explode with gunfire. November 1st, 1950, everything changes. Chinese troops cross the Yalu River, hundreds of thousands of them, calling themselves volunteers. The People's Volunteer Army has secretly infiltrated North Korea, hiding in the mountains. American commanders don't believe the reports at first. A few Chinese soldiers captured in early November are dismissed as insignificant. Top officials brush off warnings that the presence of Chinese forces poses a great threat. They're making a catastrophic mistake. By mid-November, 12,000 men of the 1st Marine Division, along with several thousand army soldiers, are strung out on a single supply route nearly 80 miles long, heading toward the Chosin Reservoir. The landscape is brutal. Snow-covered mountains. A single unpaved road winding through passes and valleys. On Thanksgiving Day 1950, American forces distribute holiday meals to troops in the field. Some Marines are sent on patrol and return to find nothing left but cold turkey. There's a sense of optimism in the air. That night, everything ends. November 27, 1950, the trap springs. A cold front from Siberia descends over the Chosin Reservoir. Temperatures plummet to 25 below zero, then lower. At its worst, the temperature reaches -36 degrees Fahrenheit. Medical supplies freeze solid. Morphine syringes must be thawed in medics' mouths before use. Blood plasma becomes useless ice. Batteries die. Gun lubricant turns to gel. Firing pins won't strike hard enough to ignite rounds. And then the Chinese attack. Mao Zedong's orders are simple. Destroy the 1st Marine Division. He sends 12 divisions, more than 120,000 troops from the elite 9th Army Group to surround and annihilate 30,000 UN forces within 72 hours. The Chinese have redrawn the battle map. MacArthur's Western Army is in full retreat. Newspapers back home run headlines: 31st Infantry annihilated, Marine Corps trapped, Lost Legion by every measure. The UN forces should be wiped out. December 1st to 13th. 1950, the impossible march. Major General Oliver P. Smith, commander of the 1st Marine Division, refuses to surrender. When told to retreat, he responds, "Retreat? Hell! We're not retreating. We're just advancing in a different direction." What follows is one of the most brutal fighting withdrawals in military history. Men endure severe frostbite, sleepless nights, total mental and physical exhaustion. If you stop moving, you freeze. Marines were Mickey Mouse boots, big clumsy things like cartoon characters that keep feet from freezing if you remember to change socks regularly. Marines never take their clothes off for weeks. They sleep on frozen ground, eat sea rations from cans. The 5th and 7th Marines fight south, singing the Marines' hymn as they march with their wounded and dead. Marine and Navy fighter bombers fly continuous sorties, striking Chinese positions ahead of the column. Late in the battle, Chinese troops blow up a critical bridge on the withdrawal route. The US drops by parachute 8-ton portable bridge sections. Marine combat engineers reassemble them under fire, creating a replacement bridge that enables UN forces to escape. On December 13th, the survivors reach the port of Hungnam. They've turned certain destruction into survival. The Chinese 9th Army Group suffers between 40,000 and 80,000 casualties from combat and cold. 2 entire divisions are forced to disband. The Army Group is pulled from front lines and doesn't return to strength until spring 1951. Those losses 40% of Chinese forces in Korea prevent follow-on attacks and allow UN forces to maintain their foothold in South Korea. The war transforms. Armistice talks begin on July 10, 1951, but drag on for 2 more years. Hills change hands in brutal battles of attrition. Names like Heartbreak Ridge, Pork Chop Hill, and Old Baldy enter military legend. On July 27, 1953, an armistice is finally signed after 1,127 days of war. The toll is staggering. UN forces lose nearly 171,000 killed, 566,000 wounded, and 32,600 missing. Communist losses approach 900,000 killed, 687,000 wounded, and more than 145,000 missing. Civilian casualties reach 3 million. No peace treaty is ever signed. North and South Korea technically remain at war today. November 27, 1950, Chosin Reservoir, that night when the temperature fell to 36 below zero. When 120,000 Chinese soldiers surrounded 12,000 Americans. Conventional wisdom said those men were already dead, but they didn't know about the grit that keeps you moving when your body should quit. About the discipline that makes you change frozen socks with frost-bitten fingers. About the refusal to abandon wounded comrades even when carrying them means certain death. They survived 17 days in conditions that should have killed them, and in doing so, they proved something that still echoes through military history. In war, numbers aren't everything. Equipment isn't everything. Sometimes, the only thing that matters is the refusal to accept the inevitable. The Korean War earned its nickname, the Forgotten War, but for those who fought at the frozen Chosin, forgetting is impossible.